What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jimmy James 59, and I think today is going to be a really useful video for you. Very practical if you're just trying to get better at Age of Empires 2 DE, whether you're trying to improve for the sake of it, whether you're grinding the ladder to hit that next elo benchmark, or you just want to follow along the game better in your own viewing time. This video is going to have a lot of good information for you, so I recommend you stick around and watch to the end so that way you can maximize all the information in this video. Now, in a previous video about my top 10 ways to get and stay above 1000 elo, I'll put a link to that at the end of this video so that way when you're done with this one you can go ahead and jump into some more useful content. I mentioned that watching replays, right, whether it's your own or replays of other people, is really useful. It's a great way to recognize chronic mistakes or poor decisions that you might have made in games, and it's also a great way to be exposed to different situations. There's so many situations you can run into in Age of Empires 2. Some of them repeat often, and then others are more rare, and you don't want to get surprised by them. So watching replays is a great way to get better. However, right, contrary to popular belief, right, if you're anything like me, then you actually have a life outside of the game. I know, tough to believe. Whether you have work or school, or every Sunday Cynthia makes you go to brunch with people who you don't really have anything in common with and you don't care about, and they talk about the stupid subjects like whether the pancakes have walnuts or whether the orange juice was locally pressed, and you are off in your own world trying to think about how you can do a 19-pop scout rush with Spanish, even though they really don't have any eco bonus, but they have such a nice late game if you can get there. And well, you see my point, right? Your time is limited, so if watching replays is an important part of the game and getting better, but your time is limited, what you want to do is be really deliberate with how you watch replays. And so that's really the point of this video. And I want to cover in this video, this is a part 1, where we're going to be covering some of the more early game concepts. Part 2 will deal more with late game concepts. So I'll just say the last thing in this intro is that this video is really themed towards like a mid to low elo audience. There's a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is that, you know, I'm kind of an intermediate player myself, and so that's where I can best provide tips that are going to help you in your gameplay, because those are the kind of things that I think about. And also the vast majority of the player base is also in a mid to low elo range, so I really think that the content of this video is going to be really helpful for you. And I think even if you are a high elo player, mastering a game is really all about drilling the basics, drilling the fundamentals. So I think that this is a video that should be helpful, even though it's really directed towards low to mid elo audiences. I think it'll be helpful for pretty much anybody watching. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in the video, and we'll start off with the Dark Age. Okay, so from minute 0, second 0, there's already a few things when you're going to watch a replay that you want to already have done, right? The first thing is you want to make sure that you've downloaded Capture Age, right? Capture Age is a really useful tool. It is independently developed, but it is integrated into the game, and so you should have buttons in your version of Age of Empires 2 DE next to your replays that will allow you to spectate the game in Capture Age, and if you don't have it installed, that will take you to the website to download it. It's something I highly recommend. There's a lot of good data, as you can see here, and that will make watching your replays much easier, and you'll be able to get a lot of interesting trends and data out of that. Right now, the second thing, right before you start your replay, because again, you've already played this game, so you know what happens. So we're not going to cover a lot of, you know, the real-time stuff going on. There's things that you want to watch out for, right? And you do want to think for a moment what the civilization matchups are from the outset, and maybe what you should have gone for. That is something a bit more in retrospect, but what you're going to watch for in Dark Age is how you go about it. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to put this on my vision here and really look at this game from my perspective. Okay, so we've started. So the first thing that you're really going to want to think about, check your start. Are you getting to your 2 houses and getting your sheep to your TC? Are you getting to that quickly? Take a look at your idle TC time. If you're having, more than just like 1 or 2 seconds, then you want to make sure that's an area that you want to improve, because you could be a lot more efficient there. You really shouldn't have any more than like 1 second of idle TC time from the very beginning. Now, the second thing you're going to want to make sure you do is that you're scouting well, right? So are you leaving gaps in your scouting that you need to repair or fix, right? So this might be something of a gap here. I wish I'd explored a little bit further out, but it is worth noting, right? We're finding a lot of our sheep, and that's something else you want to consider. Are you scouting your base, finding your resources, right? Where are they, right? Are you getting them? Are you scouting well? Are you leaving gaps? Because once you've found all of your sheep and all of your boar, and you can see, well, we have our elephants here, and we have our elephants here, we found everything, right? So we're actually, right, our idle TC time, right, we're doing pretty well. Our idle eco time, pretty decent as well. Now, idle eco time, and I want to explain what this is. This is when your villagers are not contributing to your economy. It's not something, if you're keeping it lower, right? I wouldn't freak out about it too much, even if it gets a little high. I don't want to put an exact percentage on it, but if you start to see really high numbers, I mean, like anything above like 10% or something, once you get decent stage into the game, that's when you do want to start questioning whether you have villagers who are just kind of sitting around and not doing all that much, right? So as you can see, we're going in through this build order, and one of the reasons I mentioned idle eco time is because if you garrison your villagers in the town center, right, to kill the elephant, you can see your idle eco time is going to go up. That took us from about 9 seconds to 36 seconds. So because we have, I think it was 6 villagers, and they're basically not doing anything according to the game, but actually they were helping us kill the boar. So one of the things, let me just pause here, because you can see, right, that we're going to go scout the opponent's base. So you want to check and make sure you scouted everything, right? And think about 2 things I would say at this point. 1, have you found all of your mineral resources, right? We have our back gold there, we have our gold there, and our gold there, right? So we're good there. And we have both stones. So we found everything, right? We found all of our sheep. We've eaten 4, and we have 4 left here. We know where all of our resources are. So great. We're ready to go out and scout the opponent, right? That's the first thing. And what I would say is the second thing, that have you scouted enough of your base to have a decent sense of where you might want to wall off, right? As you can see here, right, we do have a nice compact base here. The front is pretty open, but you can take a look and you say, yep, we've scouted enough here, we're good to go. So, right, when you think about this and think about this base, right, if you're doing this, then you're doing a pretty good job scouting. However, if you have lots of gaps, and we have a little bit of black areas in here, we found all our resources, so it's not a big deal. But if you have lots of gaps and you're not really, and you can't visualize how you would wall up your base, you want to make sure maybe to think about, maybe you do have a problem with scouting, right? So let's go ahead, right, keep this going. And now what we're going to go do is you want to make sure you're going and scouting the opponent. Now, when you're watching your replays, right, you want to see how you're doing this and what you should recognize and should not recognize. So the way we're going to scout here, and the way you probably should scout, is to scout kind of in like a loop, kind of arcing around the map, because you're hoping to hit your enemy's base, right? So this is something that is going to help you out a lot when you're going back and trying to scout more effectively. So you can see we don't find here, and again, the other thing too, are you keeping your scout moving, right? You can see here we're doing a pretty decent job of keeping the scout moving across the map, looking for things, and that's a good thing here, right? We are having some small stoppages, right? You're gonna have some of those, but we're keeping moving because we're still looking. Okay, now let me pause here, right? So you can see here now what you want to ask yourself, right? And you want to think about what actually happened in the game. Here is the moment we see, right? Well, capture is funny. we see a 4-tile stone. That means that we found our opponent's base, right? If you in your game, when you were here, you didn't realize that you found your opponent's base, then that's something you want to make sure to look for when you are scouting in future games, right? Remember, your main golds, your secondary golds, and your main and secondary stone are all going to have more than 3 tiles of stone on Arabia. So once you find, say, something like a 4-tile stone, you know that you're at your opponent's base. Now, this means a couple things for you, right? First of all, it means that now you have a lot of things to look for, and you want to start now scouting, looking for your opponent's resources. And not only that, but you need to be really weary of the town center and try to stick to safe areas of the map. Things like hills, big bushy wood lines. If you see deer, you're probably not close to a TC, that sort of thing. As you can see, we recognize this. We do see these, or we see these trees, but we're not going any further, right? Because we don't know if those are straggler trees around the town center or not. We do see this hill, right, which is very good for us. And again, a little dangerous, but hey, finding, look, there's another wood line, right? Going ahead, seeing another hill, etc. Right? So we're finding these wood lines, and here's the thing: now that it's safe, right, we can go back to our base, take a look at what's going on, and in this game, right, you're always thinking about strategy, and you want to think about, now you know the strategy that you went for, assuming you're watching this game at a pretty reasonable time here, right? You knew what strategy you went for, and you want to always be evaluating if it's the right one, right? And that's something you're going to base a lot on the civilization matchups, right? You can see here actually, right? Well, let's think about it this way. We're up against Bulgarians. Bulgarians are really well known for having a lightning fast men-at-arms rush because they don't have to research the swordsman upgrades, they get them for free. Knowing that, even going up 20 population with a civ like Indians, probably if our opponent's playing very strongly, we're not going to be able to get men-at-arms out as fast as them. So what do we want to do? Well, and again, we're predicting here, and when we're looking over our maps, we have to ask ourselves, are we finding our opponent's resources, right? We found lumber, we found berries, right? We have a sense of where they are, but we actually haven't found the gold yet. So we don't know if they're going for men-at-arms yet, but right now we took a chance. Sometimes let me pause this. Sometimes in the early game, you really are taking a chance in terms of strategy. For me, right, playing it with archers, I've already decided that I'm going to play a bit more defensive. And so what I want to do at this point in scouting is you want to think about how you're going to track your opponent's army. So that's the question that you're going to ask. Have you figured out what your opponent is going to go into? That's the first thing. And have you found resources to target? Right? Let's keep going. All right, we have our scout chilling here a little bit, wanting to keep that scout moving a bit more. But again, we're trying to play it very safe so we don't run into the town center. And aha, right? Okay, so what we've done now, we see the barracks, it has the flags on it, so we know militia are garrisoned inside of it, right? So in our first 2 things of scouting, right, finding resources and tracking our opponent's, well, there's 2 parts of it, right? Knowing what our opponent's going to do strategically, and then tracking their army. So there's a strategic side, and then a tactical side. Or you might say a macro side and a micro side, right? And I'm using these terminologies so that you can start to categorize how to think about play in your own head, right? And so that way you can easily file these into different sort of mental classifications, right? What we've done, we've figured out what our opponent's going for, and we were right in this scenario, right? It looks like he's going to go for men-at-arms. So we picked a really nice strategy to counter this, but if he was going for something like scouts, right, then we could have, easily made some spears and played defense that way. So it's not the biggest deal, right? We picked a strategy, again, thinking about our best responses, right? What we don't want to do is get caught with our pants down by a men-at-arms rush and we don't have anything to defend it. That's the worst thing that can happen here, because then we lose all of our initiative. So, right, we played the safe strategy, and it turns out we actually have the exact right strategy to counter what he's going to do. So let's keep going, right? Now, you can see we're up to the next stage. He's up to the next stage. We're still in this Dark Age transition, though, so we're going to stay in Dark Age here. And here we have a decision here, right? Feudal Age has begun, and so I want to take a pause here and think about now what we're going to use in our Feudal Age concepts. Because remember, this is a video about early game concepts. So now that we're in Feudal Age, let's go ahead and start thinking about what we're going to be doing there. Okay, right, so we're in Feudal Age, right? We just got there, and you can see, right, we had a pretty nice uptime, and that's one of the first things that when you're looking at your replays, you're going to want to go back and look at, right? What was your uptime like? We can see here that we have a little bit of idle TC time, but it looks like a lot of that is from the fact that we actually didn't have a villager queued up immediately upon hitting Feudal Age. That's really bad, right? So this is not the best setup for us. Part of the reason this happens is because we're trying to scout, we're doing a lot of other things. If we go back to our base, right, we're trying to get our buildings down. There's a lot, when you hit the next age, there are so many things to do, right? So it's easy to let some things fall, but we're having some, we're having some idle time right now, and we want to make sure that we correct that. So you want to watch in your gameplay. I think something that is really, really common is that you actually have idle time at the beginning of ages because there's so many things to do. There's often fights taking place. You have your opponent in your base or near your base with a scout, and there's just so many different things to consider. So that's something you really want to keep your eye on. Always be looking at, when you're watching a replay, looking at your idle TC time, seeing where that kind of thing is happening. So now that we're in Feudal Age, right, what do we want to do with Feudal Age? Well, right, we're seeing that our uptimes are pretty good, like, for the most part here, and then we want to make sure that we're actually getting our buildings up and we're getting our upgrades, and that's something that in this build we've done a pretty decent job at, right? Getting our upgrades, getting our timings, and now we see our opponents in Feudal, right? He's got the free men-at-arms, and so now what we're going to do, we really just want to track this army now, right? We want to track this army, and going back to our base here, right, we're trying to get our villagers on the resources they need to be on, right? That's the other thing you're really going to want to do, right? We have these military considerations, but remember, we have a build that we're going for, and we want to execute it as best as we can here. So we're trying to get our villagers where they're supposed to be. You can see we're going one range, one blacksmith to open up here, right? So we're going to get 4 on gold here at the mining camp to make sure that we're going to have enough gold to keep pumping out archers. And notice this as well, right? Let me take another pause here, right? Given that we think that we knew that the men-at-arms were coming, we went ahead and we quick-walled, well, it's not quick-walled, but we pre-walled, let's say, vulnerable areas, right? This lumber camp, we went ahead, we got walls up so they wouldn't be under duress. This secondary lumber camp here is a bit further in the back, so that's one that we can wait to wall up if we really need it. And plus, we should be able to get this side walled off pretty decently. We have villagers in the area. So again, that's another consideration to think of. Think about how you're going to defend your base against aggression, because remember, we're playing very defensively right now. So we have our archers, right? We're making archers. We're going to want to get fletching. Boom. We have fletching below 12 minutes, right? Again, we're playing a really, really defensive strategy here, right? And now this is the other thing you're going to want to do, right? So we have our villagers on gold. Now what we can do, we want to be making farms, right? So when we have, right now we have a lot of wood, right? We have some villagers who are garrisoned in this town center, and we have some more going to gold. We're really trying to get walled up here, right? We have, right, a lot of sheep that are still left to be utilized here, right, as we're getting this farm down. So we're probably going to want to add more to sheep to go ahead, harvest those. We don't need to get farms down just yet because we're still consuming the sheep. I still think it's a good idea to be making farms, but again, right now this wood might be spent decently walling up our base and maybe getting another range up, maybe getting some other kind of building up. We'll talk about that more here in a second. So now in Feudal Age, right, scouting is something that you're doing really at every point in the game. Sending these archers forward, right, the point of this really is to see what our opponent has, right? So now, right, we found out that our opponent, even though we can't see what he's doing, we went forward. Probably would have been a little bit better to go forward with the scout, but it's on very low HP because we were fighting our opponent's scout earlier. So I want to keep this scout alive. I'm willing to send these archers. We have fletching, right? So We're going to have a little bit more vision on the map because we have a bit more range. And now we see he's got skirmishers. Now, here's something else that you want to make sure you're doing in your gameplay, right? But it's worth knowing even when you're watching your replays, right? Remind yourself in your replays that you want to be clicking on units in game to see, right, what kind of upgrades they have. Again, you're going to watch these upgrades because the reason you want to ask yourself this is you want to ask yourself, you know, could I have taken fights that were advantageous to me? Because you're trying to find here what are missed opportunities, right? I'm going to talk about opportunities and positioning kind of a lot in this video because it's something that now this is where it's starting to emerge when we're thinking about your military strategy, right? Was there an opportunity here? Well, I have 4 archers and here are some skirmishers, and now, right, this is an opportunity here, right? Where now what we have, and again, I'm stopping this video because I want to explain a few of these concepts a bit more in detail, right? We have some skirmishers that are caught out in the open. We have fletching on our archers. We can micro around, and we have a scout. Remember, skirmishers have minimum range, so we can actually get some value with our army dealing with these skirmishers here, right? So this is an opportunity we saw and we took advantage of, right? Now, we have a pretty big military force coming in, right? We took out that 1 skirmisher, and again, we're trying to get some value here. We have a lot of melee units, right? Both the scouts go down, and there's a skirmisher here in the back. We really need to back up. He's got quite a bit of army, even though it's a lot of melee units. With the skirmishers there and the fact that we don't have armor on our archers, not something we want to fight, right? So again, ask the question, was it the right move to back up here? Well, probably yeah, right? If we keep going forward, right, there's more skirmishers on the way, and as we go forward, the reinforcement distance for him to cover is shorter and it's longer for us. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to throw units away and not get any value out of them, right? The battle here, you can see that our economies for the most part are pretty untouched, right? There's no eco KDs really for either one of us, and all of the fighting has been in this back and forth sort of style. And now we're going forward again, and notice as well, right, when this replay, there's this great hill here. One of the things that you want to get into a good habit of doing is actually watching for these hills and seeing, oh, well, this would have been a great place to take a fight. Like, for instance, we're taking this fight right here, right now, right? Getting a little bit of value out of it, even though with armor on these skirmishers, right, there's not a lot we can do. So what do? Okay, so we can see that he's taking pretty hard in the skirmishers, right? We've seen quite a lot of them. We know he has armor. This means that with archers, right, this is not a fight that we can really take and win. So what we want to do here, right, is actually get out scouts so we have something to counter the skirmishers, right? Again, we're a little bit down in villagers. Taking a look at the idle TC time, stopping to take a look at that, we can see that we've had quite a bit. Our idle eco time is okay, and we are winning a bit military-wise, but we're actually behind in villagers. So the military counts are pretty even. So at this stage of the game, our opponent does have a bit more of a lead, even though you can see, right, the scores here are really even. And I'll talk a bit about the scores in a second, once we get to the transition from Feudal Age to Castle Age, assuming we get there in this video, right? So now what we're doing, right, we have some decent villagers on gold here. Again, we're allocating villagers to other places. We're getting them walled up, right, because we know that at some point we're going to need gold, and we're getting our scouts out now, right? We're getting our scouts out, and now we can go forward a little bit because if he's got skirmishers, great, we can use our scout to get rid of them. But hey, even if he has spearmen or men-at-arms, we can just run away with the scout, right? Okay, boom, right? We've scouted the opponent. We know where his army is. And this is really great because we're just getting walled up over here. Now we are walled up at home. And so we can feel pretty safe now about going and figuring out what our opponent's doing and what kind of fights we can take. Right? And something I'll also say, if you take a look here, you'll see in Capture Age, the idle worker time, we have 4 idle villagers here right now, so this isn't great. Right? You can see that our economy here is pretty sloppy. Again, there's a lot going on, and we're playing pretty aggressively, though. So is our opponent as well. Our opponent's doing a really nice job with the economy, but, right, here we go, right? We take a pretty nice fight here, and Now militarily, right, we took a really quality engagement here. So again, going back and think about what we did right. Well, economically speaking, from this game, we can already see that eco-wise, we're having a little bit of trouble keeping our TCs going and keeping our economy from idling out. So that's something that needs to be improved. Now, you don't want to just focus on the things you get wrong. You also want to think about the things you get right. One of the things that we are seeing in this game is from a military perspective, we're actually doing a lot of things right. We're going for the right counters. We've been massing troops up. We have a nice big military, and we micro down the units that we need to from our opponents. The threats to our scouts here were the men-at-arms and the spearmen, and our archers took care of those very, very quickly because we have a nice big group of them. And this is going to allow our scouts now to take really nice engagements against the skirmishers. All right, so now we're chasing this army back. We're keeping pressure off of our base, actually. And so this is really useful for us. So we're getting nice value here. There's a spear. That's okay. Run away. Boom. Spearman goes down. Let's resume the attack here, right? So we're 3 villagers down, but we have taken a bit of a military advantage. Okay, now let's stop here. Again, always think about scouting. Always think about vision. Now we see this gold. We see our opponents on gold. This should really come as no surprise that our opponent's on gold at this phase of the game. But it's worth noting, right? We actually didn't know where our opponent's gold mine was in terms of where they were researching things. Where they were actually mining until 19 minutes into the game. This is not very good quality scouting, right? We did a really nice job tracking our opponent's army and keeping tabs on that, but we really haven't done a good job about our opponent's base. In fact, we know fairly little about his base other than he's got a backwood line here. We could probably guess he has a wood line here, and we know that there were berries at least at some point that were there. That's about all we know from his base so far. So it's not the best scouting from us, and that's really something in this game and these early game concepts. We really need to improve our Dark Age and our Feudal Age scouting here. Now, we see this gold, and we go ahead, take the opportunity, right? An opportunity presented itself, and again, we took it. Now, this is important too, right? So we took an opportunity to get a villager kill, which was very good from us. We see the tower going up, right? We can tell from looking at how much has been constructed that it's pretty far way along. What do? We know that there's no more opportunity to attack this gold, and so what do? We back off, right? So you want to know the opportunities to take, but you also want to know what are some opportunities that you don't want to take. You don't want to force opportunities. You don't want to force actions where there isn't an opportunity already available. Take opportunities, don't force them, right? So we go ahead, we back off, but we have learned some things. This was actually a really good engagement. We know where he's taking gold. We know he's taking a front gold that can be easily harassed. And now we know he has a tower, right? So we know that, we want to go check out the stone and see if he's mining stone, right? Now we do see a mining camp here. Now here is something, if you want to get really high quality, right, with your scouting, something that you want to do, click on the stones, and you can do this in Dark Age too, to figure out, say, if your opponent is going for a Drushfast castle. We can see that there's a mining camp here, but none of the stone has been taken, right? So what this means is that we know, unless our opponent has another mining camp on another stone, which seems pretty unlikely, right? We know our opponent is not going to have the stone to get another TC up, and now we're harassing this area, right? So again, we're getting really nice value out of this army, right? Now our opponent is on the way up to Castle Age, so are we. So here's something that I want to talk about now and think really deeply about score, right? Now, when you're in a game, right, score is really helpful for you to try and get a broad sense of what's going on. But the problem with score is that there are a lot of components that make it up, and so it can be very difficult to know which element of the score is causing a differentiation, right? So for instance, going back and thinking about this game, right? One of the things you might consider taking a look at, right, your opponent's scouting. You can see he doesn't have a lot of the base scouted out, right? you do, right? So that could be part of the reason why his score is a little depressed, but a real main reason, when you take a look and see the score is that low, you might be really tempted to think that you had a big advantage, right? Now, in this game, right, you can see we do have a bit of a villager advantage because we got 2 villager kills, making up for our idle TC time a little bit. And we have a lot of military. Our kill death ratio is really good, so we would expect to have a higher score in this scenario. However, because scores factor in resources, then a low score from an opponent can be a bit misleading. Because when you click up to the next stage, you're not going to have as many resources because you have to give resources, right, to click up to the next stage. So, again, right, that is something that you want to consider here. And you also want to take a look when you're clicking up here, right? Thinking about clicking up. As you can see, we're probably going to hit Feudal Age around 23 minutes. Our opponent's going to get there probably somewhere in the mid 22-minute range. Again, this can be something that's very contextual. There was a lot of Feudal Age fighting. We had to make scouts and go for a bit of a counter unit play. Our opponent did as well. This is well within the time frame of normal extended Feudal Age fighting. So I think this is still a decent time to click up. But again, one of the things that we're going to find, we'll just go ahead and restart this video. Our opponent is going to get to the next stage a bit more ahead of us. We can see from the idle economy time and the idle TC time, that's going to happen. So if we hadn't taken those really good military engagements and gotten value out of this army, then we might be in a bad situation where our opponent has lots of military and we're not set up to deal with it, right? Now, another thing to think about is scouting is that we actually don't know at this point what our opponent's going to go into. Now, you can kind of see from up here, our opponent was going to go knights. We don't know that. What we do know is that our opponent's Bulgarians and was making a lot of skirmishers. And given that we're making archers, we probably should expect the knight play, but we really don't know yet, right? We do know from the civilizations that he doesn't have access to crossbow, so we can feel pretty confident that we're not going to see that. And even if we do, right, we still have a lot of archers, so he can't upgrade them, so that would still be a pretty big mistake. Now, right, our opponent's on the way up to Castle Age, so we can decide here, do we break in here or not? We're going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to tell you why, because we don't know what our opponent's going to go into, but we actually know what we're going to go into. You can see, right, I'm researching bloodlines. I actually researched the first armor upgrade on the cavalry because I'm thinking that maybe I'll need camels because he might want to go into knights, and it might be a good idea to have camels. So we're going to go in here and check this out. All right, so now you can see that we have found something of I don't want to say a gold mine because that has actual meaning in this game, but we have found a bonanza here, right? There's a lot of villagers here to take out and kill, and it looks like, surprisingly, we're only getting, right, we've gotten one villager there, right? We actually didn't get a lot of villagers there because they're running away, walking away. Right? So what are we doing here, right? Well, we're in this base. This villager should go down as well, right? He's kind of trying to run away, but he's not going to make it. Now, we have a decision point to make. So, as you can see, we have 13 crossbows. For that reason, right, in this game, I decided to get the crossbow an upgrade. Given how many crossbows we have, I think that's a pretty decent move. We have Bodkinero as well, and here I do something that's a little bit different, right? I did get the first armor upgrade on the cavalry, right? That's going to give these scouts a bit more leeway to take any kind of archer fire, because our opponent could be going for cavalry archers himself, because Bulgarians do get pretty decent cav archers. But also to have a little bit of extra defense while raiding, trying to snipe villagers. I did want that on these scouts, but I actually do want to make cavalry archers because I feel like cavalry archers are going to be a good play against knights if I can get them in a nice mass, and Indians do have fully upgraded cavalry archers. And if he's making cavalry archers, then we should be able to trade in Castle Age, right? So, now, here's a big decision point. You want to go back, again, I've talked about playing opportunistically versus positionally. We've played this game, for the most part, very opportunistically, right? Even though our opponent was in Castle Age, right? We went in and we saw that he had that, you know, there was a great place to attack from. He caused a lot of idle eco time. Right now, his idle eco time has exceeded ours, and we're starting to catch up a little bit in idle TC time, right? We've hit Castle Age, and you can see, right, that we are doing better here with our Castle Age idle TC time. And now there's a decision point that you want to evaluate, right? So you want to watch his engagements and think, did we make the right decision? Now, as you can see, right, our opponent here does have a siege workshop. We're making the decision to go deeper into this base. Now, in-game, the rationale is, well, we're not going to make any more crossbows. We're going to go with cavalry archers or camels, something like that. So let's, since we're here, get some usage out of these crossbows. And not only that, but we have the scouts here in order to help us snipe siege, right? So we have a good defense here. Our opponent really, right, kind of makes a mistake here. Should have got that mango out there. But again, we have the scouts there. They could have easily tracked down that mango, and our opponent actually calls the GG, right? So you could see here, right, this is really a lesson in this video of a more opportunistic play style that is suited towards these early game concepts, right? Early games, because you don't really have the ability in early games to take and hold positions unless you're going to make a tower or you're just going to keep your archers stationary somewhere. You're often playing a lot more opportunistically, trying to catch armies out on the field, reducing their numbers, catching villagers when you can, right? Feudal Age is a really sort of geared towards more opportunistic gameplay, and we had a number of opportunities we took in this game, and we went for them. So we want to think about, like, what did we accomplish? Did our counters work in this game? I think in large part they did, right? We kept the army numbers low. It's really this late Feudal Age, early Castle Age was really the only time that we were actually in our opponent's base at all. And since the early game, they really weren't in our base at all, right? So I think both of us did a pretty decent job of playing defense, but again, we got value out of our army. So even though we didn't quite keep pace economically, and that's something to improve upon, we nevertheless, right, achieved value. And I don't think this is an early GG at all from our opponent, right? We have a nice kill death. He doesn't have very many resources. We can idle a lot of farms. Our economy is untouched. This area is very exposed. This is the key part here. Right now, with Bulgarians, right, I didn't mention this early on, but I'm mentioning this now. He actually can get a town center down with Bulgarians because Bulgarian TCs cost minus 50% stone. However, he doesn't have the wood for it right now because what did we do? Right? We idled this wood line. Right? So even though he has the stone for it, we idled this wood line and really kept him from having the wood to do it. So he still can't, even though he actually has the stone for a TC, he's not going to be able to get one up. And that means these villagers are very, very exposed, right? He doesn't have the resources to make any more siege anytime soon. And we can go ahead, we can get out of his base if we need to. So he is in a really rough position and is probably set on a track to lose this game in early to mid Castle Age if he wanted to play this longer. So I think this was a reasonable assessment of his ability to achieve his win conditions and make a comeback in this scenario. Now, that's something you really do want to think about though. What were your win conditions? Did you GG too early is a question, especially when you're analyzing your losses, that you want to answer, right? And I think that's something that when you're watching your replay in a game, it might not be obvious to you when you should GG or not. And I know that especially in team games, my teammates and I, we often have discussions where we go back and forth like, should we have GG'd? I don't know, did we GG too early? Or by contrast, man, this game was over a long time ago. I think in this case, where this game really it really wasn't out of the woods until we got in here, did a lot of idle eco time. This is kind of a game of 1,000 cuts, I think, where we took some opportunities and put him in a very difficult position. So I think it's an appropriate time here, but sometimes you're going to find when you go back and look at a game, you go, wow, I really could have held on for a lot longer and maybe came back. This is especially true at mid to low elo. A lot of times we're not out of it at all when we think we are, and so it's more common for us to it's pretty common that we'll GG early, and there's also a lot of times when we're out of a game and we'll play on for a long time too. So you just kind of have to read it, and we read it from our opponent here, taking a look at when they should have GG'd and what options they had. And so probably the right move here from our opponent. Probably was going to make it really difficult for him to get the kind of resources he needed to come back in this game. So with that, that's part one of this video, right? So we talked about a lot of early game concepts here, focusing on scouting, idle time, both with the town center and villagers. We focused a lot on military micro, right? Winning engagements, getting value out of your army, and also thinking about how to play opportunistically, how to recognize advantages when you have counter units when your opponent might be vulnerable. So I hope that you really got a lot out of this video and that it's going to benefit you in your gameplay. And part 2 of this video I'll be posting next week. We're going to be looking at late game concepts. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead, right, hit that like button. And if you like content like this, leave a comment in the comment section below. If you have other early game content, or excuse me, other early game comments, right, things that you use to make your early game more effective, leave a comment in the comment section below. And lastly, if you want to get access to more and more of these videos and be notified, I mean, I suppose you can always just search for me, but if you want to be notified when a video comes up, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell at the YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm Jimmy James 59. Check you out there on the ladder. Peace.